This is Book 3, Chapter 2, The Carcass of Beef, Part 2. They'd broken through the old brick wall in Castang's carriage house, a renovation underway. Soutine took full advantage of this, casting chickens in full plumage, pendant gray and gold and green, against a jagged frame of darkness, squawking in the ecstasy of death. Talons, beaks, and wattles flamed and sputtered in a nightmare space of murder on his canvas. A still life series ran to game, the hair against the green slats of a shutter, the turkey on a cloth with golden apples. Soutine conveyed their extremis in color. Not satisfied, he bartered with his hapless dealer to procure a side of beef when he returned to Paris. Butchers grappled with a battered carcass up the stairs, a brief comedic interlude at the apartment he'd been renting. To the hired man's relief, he'd made it through the door. The painter sent for Paulette once the butcher's boy had hung the cage of ribs. His motif was the Rembrandt at the Louvre, that bleeding carcass strung upon a rack across the room, the girl appearing at the door. But Kime would come a little closer to his model, and he'd hurl himself at more extensive spans of canvas. Paulette arrived to find him in a world of meat, his palate fat with gristle, and his model dripping on the floor. She placed a pan to catch the blood. "But Kime, can this thing hang here overnight?" Paulette could taste the painting as the smell of colors mixed with beef. Apparently the painter faced another sleepless night. His helper fixed herself a bed this time, but had to wake each hour to baste the hulk. "Paulette, the trick's to keep it bleeding," Kime commanded. "Make it wet." She wetted it. And when the morning sun came shining through the window, you'd mistake the carcass for a red soleil, a running track of bones beneath a sagging skin. By noon, the horrid greenback flies had come, and Soutine had another canvas pinned and propped against an oil-splattered table. He mixed a pile of cobalt and alizarin, a blackout violet at the center of a scumbled wheel of colors, bleeding into gray. His oil palimpsest began to bubble in the heat as Soutine layered splay on splay of tortured meat between the scratchwork ribs to end the second day. The sunrise found him scraping back the green he'd laid in semi-darkness. Hours passed. The colors changed. The carcass wore a sheen of viscous rot, its rind a venous blast of atrophy. It cracked in hieroglyphs of morbid skin. The painter, slouching, cast his shadow on the sagging monolith. By 12 o'clock, the neighbors were amassing in the hall. No one ever bothered with Soutine from time to time, but this time, he was asking for it. The building smelled like rotting flesh. The landlord pounded at the door. "You bastard! Go away! Enough, Soutine! Unless you haul this garbage from the building, I will have you hauled away!" This fresh affront made Kime throw down his brush. "You're killing me! I've told you 50 times I paint! This is my studio!" The landlord was unwilling to put up with it, and a complaint was filed. The gendarme were the next to none. "Soutine, you have to let them in." This faint, exhausted plea from Paulette hit him like a rock. He stopped his painting, calmly turned around, unlocked the door, and opened it. The shock was registered succinctly when the gendarme found the carcass hanging in a buzz of flies. "Explain, monsieur." The captain looked around as Soutine plied him with apologies and Paulette fumbled with a swatting broom. He saw the 3 completed pictures. "These are marvelous," he mumbled, and the room depressurized. The sympathetic officer allowed the tired painter to assume the mantle of an artist in the aperture of his protected space. No law applied. "I agree you should continue here, monsieur, but how securely have you got this tied?" He checked the knots and nodded in approval. "Are you familiar with formaldehyde?" He suggested opening a window. The removal of the body was postponed until the weekend, giving Soutine 3 more days. In all that time, Paulette would later swear her friend remained awake and working. They hardly spoke. Soutine, his shoulders hunched, would lean against a chair and load a brush and lunge. He broke a dozen brushes in a day. 3 times he tried to eat, but eating made him choke. Paulette would pull the bowl away. "Oh, Kime, you need to stop. I'll finish when it falls apart." It fell. And from the slime, his hanging carcass series rose to 10, each painting fully spread with crucified and falling cattle, seething gristle end to end. On Saturday, the thing would slide across the floor and down the stairs and out. A gollum slab extinguished in a tide of passion, fallen in a savage bout of extra rounds. Soutine himself collapsed. Swarovski paid to sanitize the rout and cross the landlord's palm. Paulette, perhaps intuiting an impact on the painter's ulcer, diagnosed exhaustion as a relapse. She'd seen him through the throes of stomach pain. Her premonition, her experience, and her devotion would serve him well again.